So, hello again, and welcome to another one of my weekly lessons. I know I don't make them every week. I actually do create the lesson and I teach them, but I don't always make an extra video because I'm tired by the end of the day. But I decided to do it because I put in all this work. I figure, you know what, I might as well share what I've done. So I like to share what I do during the week and make an English lesson out of it. Um, and I like learning this right here, which is 3 days ago, the day before yesterday, today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, 3 days from now. I do this because a lot of English learners, even advanced students, sometimes will say things like tomorrow for the day after tomorrow, or they'll say 3 days later, which is okay. But usually I would say something like, I'll do something tomorrow, and then 3 days later is like 3 days later from then. If we're talking about now, I think it sounds more appropriate to say 3 days from now. Um, so I do that, and I talk about some of the things I did during the week. As you can see, there are a list of things, but the main thing that we did was it was my son's birthday, 4 years old, and we did a good old-fashioned piñata party. Now, I'll show you a little video. I showed this to them as well. We did this piñata party, and I show it and I explain it because they may or may not know what a piñata is. Some of them have seen it, some of them didn't know it. I thought this would be an amazing thing to show. I like culture. You know, it breaks it open. There's some candy and there's some toys in it. And I thought, hey, this would be a great time. Anytime something happens in my week, I want to share with my students some sort of cultural or historical fact or something that I can tie it into the lesson. In this case, I thought, okay, let's find out. I know that I've done piñata parties growing up. I know it has a Mexican uh, origin to some degree, but there's probably more to it. I don't really know exactly what's the significance of it. And I started digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And I found out that actually piñatas come from China, and my students are Chinese. So it would be really interesting now to share this with them. And it turns out they didn't know because it changed often, just like spaghetti and ketchup are also from like Asia, and things like ketchup came from fermented fish sauce, which is actually a Southeast Asian dish, but it changed completely by the time it gets back and they try to recreate what they were creating. It's so much different. It actually came from Marco Polo, one of his expeditions, supposedly. So let me just go ahead and read that. This is what I would have my students read, and then we'd talk more about it. The piñata, a colorful and festive staple at parties, has a rich history that spans several cultures and continents. Its origins trace back to China, where figures of animals were filled with seeds and hit with sticks to ensure a fruitful harvest, a tradition Marco Polo reportedly brought to Italy. The custom then spread to Spain, where it gained religious significance as part of the Lenten celebration. Introduced to Mexico by Spanish missionaries in the 16th century, the piñata evolved into its modern form, a seven-pointed star representing the seven deadly sins, beaten with a stick to symbolize the struggle against temptation and evil. Today, the piñata, often crafted in a variety of shapes and colors, is a symbol of joy and celebration, commonly broken during festive occasions as a fun game where blindfolded participants strike it to release hidden candies and treats. Now, I looked a lot into it, and there are actually traditions that were being practiced by Aztecs and Mayans that also you could say it came from that. Most likely there's some sort of combining of the two. Like they had clay pots decorated with feathers. So that kind of seems like the decoration could have come from that. It partly was the Spanish were trying to convert the natives to Catholicism, and they incorporated this in different ways. So there's a lot of different historical theories. All of them seem legitimate to at least some degree. There's probably a combination of them, I think. And even in Thailand, there is a tradition or a game where you're blindfolded and try to hit this clay pot and break it. So I don't think it's completely novel. It's possible they were created in different areas for different reasons, and they just were similar, or as I suggested in a Facebook post, that when the Atlantans fled from their sinking island, they traversed around the world and spread the knowledge that way. So here we go. I like to always bring in different things, and I drew a line. I would draw a line, and I asked them, and go ahead, you can do the same. They know China, of course, because they're from China, and I said, as I'm moving westward into Europe, and then Europe is small in respect to most continents. So I said, okay, I'm going to draw a line. Tell me when I get to Italy. So go ahead, tell me when I touch Italy. Bing, if you said yes, I did. And then I'll keep going. Tell me when I touch Spain. Bing, that's Spain. And then I'd ask him, go ahead and find out, do you know what country this is? That's France. Spain, this one is Portugal. I'd go back, talk about this, talk about how the Portuguese mostly went to Brazil and colonized Brazil. But of course, there were Portuguese in Phuket, for instance, and Macau in China. They still speak Portuguese in some areas there, while the Spaniards and Portuguese mainly stayed to the Americas. There were, of course, Spanish in the Philippines at one point, and then talk about French going to Canada, and then English going to North America. And we talk about this on different ways. And then I ask them to identify the flags. So can you identify the flags? There we go. China, of course, they know China. Did you know China, Italy, and Spain, and Mexico? So there we go. And I actually had some other questions and asked for a lot of expression about childhood games. What's your favorite game when you were a child? If they're my older students and some of my younger students who are advanced students, I ask them what is their favorite game. We talked about games where you're blindfolded, and that included games. They had a game that's like pin the tail on the donkey, where you're blindfolded and you're trying to tack a tail onto a donkey. And they had one sticking a nose on a face or something like that. And then we moved on to the Winter Olympics. The last Winter Olympics in 2020 was in Beijing. Of course, there are Olympics celebrated every 2 years because the Summer and Winter Olympics are 2 years apart, celebrated every 4 years. And then this looked like a good opportunity to talk about Roman numerals. Now, Roman numerals, which were used in Greek, or we use in like Greek, we use in the Super Bowl for American football championships. We see it in the clock. We generally don't use the Roman numeral system for big numbers just because it's kind of complicated. They don't have zero, so we adopted the Arabic system. Zero, of course, was invented by an Indian. I visited that city, supposedly where he was born. I think it was Jaipur. And then I asked him, do you know what this number is? This number is 33. So let's go ahead and do I give a little example here. I talk about it real quick. Make sure you know what Roman numerals are. The first 20 are good to know. You will see these pop up here and there, and it could be useful to know. First 3 are real easy. They're just I's. These are capital letters, I's. The V is 5. The X is 10. The only tricky part is when you get to 4, you don't do 4 I's. You would do an I before a 5, and that represents -1. So 5 IV is 4, V is 5, VI is 6. And then 7 is V plus 2, V plus 3. Then we get to 9, which is again IX, which is 10 minus 1. And then you get, so 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 could be a little tricky, but you do the X. Again, you only have a lower number first. You don't have to worry about the possibility of having a negative X if it comes before the I and the V. So that has to be 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Again, a little tricky, but again, you have the 10 and then you have the 9. 20 is just 2 X's. So you literally put 2 X's there. And that's why you saw the 3 X and 3 I's. When you get to 50, there's 100, 1,000. We use L and C and M, but it's not a very useful thing. I had all my students go. I started with these and had them match. 5. I asked them to match each of these. Which ones are which? We're not going to do them all right now, but if you wanted to, go ahead, pause the screen, and try to see if you can match all of them. And can you explain why? That's the difficult part. So go ahead again. You can pause it, and can you explain? I know I said it quickly. Maybe you already know how Roman numerals are read. Can you explain why? There we go. Now we'll read about the ancient Olympics. A glimpse into history. Long before medals and global fanfare, the ancient Olympics began in 776 BC, Olympia, Greece, a sanctuary site for the Greek gods. These games, held in honor of Zeus, were not just athletic competitions, but also a vibrant religious festival. Picture the sacred grove of Olympia, filled with the energy of competing athletes and the cheers of spectators. Some words to remember there. Sanctuary is like a safe place. Vibrant, we've had that word before. It can mean colorful or lively. And you see this filled with energy. That is basically what vibrant is. This word is commonly misread even by advanced students because it's sacred, not scared. Just like tried and tired, often when you juxtapose the R and the I, these words are important to remember. Sacred is like a holy place, and spectator are the people who watch an event. The next one, the ancient games were exclusively for men, with participants hailing from various Greek city-states and kingdoms. During this time, a truce was declared where all conflicts paused, allowing athletes and spectators to travel safely to Olympia. This truce highlights the games' power in unifying the often warring Greek states. Again, we talk about what is a truce, what is a ceasefire, and nowadays we hear about ceasefire. Obviously, cease means to stop, fire means to shoot. Now that we have those weapons that shoot, we often will say a ceasefire, while a truce literally means go across enemy lines, shake the hands, and stop fighting for a while. I talk about the famous Christmas truce in 1914. I believe it was English and German in trench warfare, and they actually had a truce during Christmas time. They come out of their trenches and sang Christmas carols, played football, soccer, and had exchanged gifts or something. And then they actually, the generals had to get them to go back into their trenches and start fighting again. I asked them to recall any historical truces that they knew about warring states within Chinese dynasties or throughout any of world history. Some other words to focus there: exclusively, that means only men, right? Only men were competing in these sports in the ancient Olympics. And spectators, again, the people who watch it. And the word hailing is like coming from, but kind of a little more to hail from somewhere it sounds more powerful than just coming from. They come from, you hail from a certain city state. And these pictures, again, created by ChatGPT. I thought it was pretty funny. Competitions in the ancient Olympics were fierce and honored the Greek ideals of physical prowess and excellence. The athletes who competed nude to celebrate the human body participated in events like wrestling, boxing, long jump, javelin throw, and chariot racing. One of the most prestigious events was the stadium race, a short but intense sprint, which was the first and only event for many years. And I tell them stadium, the word stadium is where the word stadium comes from, and it literally meant a race that is in the stadium. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that it actually was like a race, but you could grab each other and pull them down. And then from that race came wrestling and boxing and all these other events where you could fight. And then they had, okay, the race is the race and the fight is the fight. And then, of course, they had many different games, and some of them still exist today. The victors of these games were heroes, earning not just an olive wreath, but also immense honor and lifelong fame. These champions were often immortalized in poems and statues, and their victories celebrated across their homelands. So this word immortalized, that's a big one. The word mortal, I asked him, there's the root word. Do you know what mortal means? Mortal means basically anyone that will die. If you die, that means you're immortal. So if you're alive, you're immortal. But to be immortal is to live forever, such as the Chang'e from the Mid-Autumn Festival, who drinks the elixir of immortality that was awarded to her beloved Hu Yi in their tale of the great archer who brought down 9 of the 10 sons to leave one for just enough light for the people. So I make connections to different stories. The word mortal, immortal. So the word immortality was a noun. Immortalize here is a verb that means to make someone immortal. But usually we don't use it in the literal terms, but to remember somebody through poems and statues and stories, in a sense, immortalizes them. So that's kind of a key word there that I drew from this. And then I asked some questions real quick. I like just banging out these questions real quick. So there's some funny one. What was the primary purpose of the ancient Olympics? Now, actually, I went back and I realized this story didn't clearly state it, because it said that these games held in honor of Zeus were not just athletic competitions, but also religious festivals. So it kind of didn't clearly state, but I would say what is really going on there is that it was actually mostly to honor Zeus. More so than the athletic competition. And then true or false, the ancient Olympics included a competition for the best toga design. Obviously, that's false, but introduce a new word, kind of have some fun with these. I like to have some fun questions. Sometimes my students get a little bored with rote questioning, so I like to spice it up a little bit. Here we go. Here's some more spice. The ancient Olympics began in 776 BC in where? Obviously not Mars or underwater Atlantis, but Olympia. Athens, of course, the capital of Greek. If you didn't know, you might think that. And who were allowed to participate in the ancient Olympic Games? Remember, we talked about what exclusively meant. Even if you didn't, you could cross-cancel all the ridiculous answers, and you would know that it was men from the Greek city-states and kingdom. A truce was declared during the ancient Olympics, so spectators and athletes could travel to the Olympics safely. That is true. And then the truce during the ancient Olympics allowed athletes and spectators to travel safely to Olympia. Again, there's the capital, the Mount Olympus is where the gods were supposedly lived. In what manner did athletes compete in the ancient Olympics? Nude, right? They naked, nude, in the nude. These are terms I introduced, what they meant. And ancient Olympic athletes competed in video gaming. Obviously, that is false. One of the most prestigious events in the ancient Olympics was the stadium race. I threw in 100-meter there to maybe catch them off. They didn't use meters back then, although the stadium race, it perhaps was 100 meters or about 100 meters. But that wasn't what it would have been called. And what did the victors, remember, victor is to be victorious, have a victory is the winner. A lifetime supply of olives, that would be nice, but no, it was an olive wreath they would wear as a crown. Obviously not a trip to the moon. Their weight in gold would be nice, but wasn't the case. Winners of the ancient Olympics were awarded a pet unicorn. Obviously not. And victorious athletes in the ancient Olympics were often immortalized in what? Poems and statues is correct. Now, what are 2 sports? I threw that out there. Whoa, what are the 2 sports? And then I say, you can't, not stadium race. I talked too much about the stadium race. There were 5. Can you remember any of them? Well, we'll talk about that. Here they are, and they are wrestling, boxing, long jump, javelin throw, and chariot race. And then I have pictures of them and a description, and just have them match them. Most people know some of these, and you can figure it out. That's boxing, long jump. Maybe javelin throw is a new term, but you can figure that out, especially with the description here. Wrestling is here, and the chariot race is that one. And all of these do emulate in some form of a war. And then I ask, what's the deal with the ancient Greeks? Why do they like being naked so much? We talk about some of the artwork, the Greek sculptures, and then now they're competing in athletics in the nude, naked. That seems ridiculous. And there's a couple reasons, and I talk about that. The tradition of competing in the nude at the Olympic Games, known as gymnos, had both practical and cultural reasons. Gymnos, that word which means to practice in the nude, is where we get terms like gymnasium and gymnastics, or there's at least some. I mean, even that gynecology probably has. I think that gymno. I think there's something to do with nakedness in there. I might be wrong about some of those. And then I talk about it. Well, let's talk about this. Why were they? One is for practical. I show this picture of me from 22 years ago. Here I am there on the as a college wrestler, and we wear these things called singlets. Sometimes people would make fun of us calling them like a leotard because they look like a male ballet dancing thing. But again, we're almost trying to be naked because it is practical to be in a little skin suit and roll around, although we're not completely naked, of course. There is an advantage to being naked. And then after my wrestling career, which led me to Thailand, which is this final picture there, I have these different pictures of fighting, wearing different wear, right? I mean, we are actually competing when we fight. In a sense, we're trying to get close to naked. Sometimes we wear the tight pants, sometimes we wear shorts, but with cuts that easily move. Muay Thai shorts are a little looser, but still, you're still largely naked, and we do have protection covering our cup. So completely, it makes sense. Let's go ahead and read. One practical reason was the competing without clothing allowed for greater freedom of movement, which was essential in many of the athletic events. Ancient athletic gear, which was minimal to begin with, could potentially hinder performance in sports such as running, wrestling, or jumping. And that makes sense. And we see that. We see that in swimmers are going to wear like tight Speedos and skin caps and bike riding and stuff. I mean, we do the resistance, air or water resistance. So there is a practical reason for it. There is also this cultural aspect of celebration of the human body. As we know, in ancient Greek culture, the human body, especially the male body, was highly celebrated and idealized. The Greeks believed that a well-exercised athletic body was a sign of personal discipline, moral integrity, and excellence. Competing in the nude was a way to display these qualities and to celebrate physical prowess and beauty. There are a couple historical theories. Two theories about this included one suggests that it began by accident when a runner's loincloth, which is like this from is where you actually tie it on. It looks like underwear kind of, but I mean, you would tie it. He's running, and then, he continued running. It fell off by accident. He continued running naked, realizing it was more comfortable. Impressed by his performance, other athletes started to emulate him. Another theory is that it was introduced as a measure against cheating, ensuring that no competitor could hide any device or substance that might give them an unfair advantage, which obviously makes sense if you have pockets, especially in wrestling. And I believe their wrestling was a lot like a Vale Tudo or like pancration is actually what it was, where you could even fight to the death. And if somebody had some sort of weapon hidden, would give them an unfair advantage. So those are, again, historical theories that also could make sense. We had religious ritual and religious significance. Again, the Olympics were also a religious festival, as mentioned, and nudity had ritual significance in ancient Greek religion. It was seen as a form of purity and closeness to the gods. Again, I make connections with my Chinese students who we had in this previous lesson about the hair. They didn't cut, I think, all the way to the Qing dynasty. People wouldn't cut their hair because it was given to you by your parents. You're born into this world naked in the same way that you have respect. Here, this Olympic festivities were for honoring the gods, and so to show your most godly, pure form of being naked has significance on that, and that makes sense too. Social equality, again, we can talk about classes of citizens when competing, again, competing for the gods. It doesn't matter if you're a farmer, a peasant, or a nobleman. When you're in there competing, everyone's equal by not having clothing, which could easily signify your rank or class. It would make sense that competing nude also served as a social equalizer, stripping away class distinctions that clothing often represented in the nude. Rich and poor athletes competed on a more equal footing, judged solely on their physical abilities. And then I have some questions here. So what was the practical reason for athletes competing in the nude during the ancient Olympics? Go ahead and read those questions quick. I'll give you the right answer. It is C, for greater freedom of movement. The next question is, in ancient Greek culture, what did a well-exercised athletic body represent? You could say showing respect to the gods, but I actually meant discipline and integrity. It's not the latest trend in fitness or a love for the outdoor activities. Definitely A or B would be well, but I actually chose B as what I meant it to be. In my description, I did mention about showing respect to the gods, but anyway, I'm not going to judge too much on that one. What is one historical theory about how competing nude started in the ancient Olympics? Go ahead and read those quickly. Not because of the athletes' clothes were stolen, but B, a runner's loincloth fell off. Again, loincloth was the picture that I showed, and basically just like a rudimentary underwear. And true or false, competing nude in the ancient Olympics was primarily for artistic expression. Definitely false, because it's not primarily. I gave a lot of reasons. I didn't specifically say which one was the primary reason, but I said practical and cultural. Nudity in the ancient Olympics was a way to display wealth and social status. Again, obviously not. It was to show social equality. And competing nude in ancient Olympics was known as gymnos, was the firm. There's also some Greek words, gyros, maybe gypsy, could be genie. Nudity at the ancient Olympics had what kind of significance? Minimal significance? No way. Definitely ritual significance. And now I have my students explain. Those are easy to choose the correct answer. I've said it, we've read it. Can you explain how competing in the nude serves as a social equalizer in the ancient Olympics? So would you be able to do that if I asked you? If you can, great. It would be something in the lines of, no matter what class you are, that could normally be recognized by the clothes you wear. If you're naked, everybody is essentially the same. And that's not true, of course, but anyway, describe how nudity was related to cheating prevention in ancient Olympic Games. Again, can you describe it? Can you say it? Many different ways. People could hide devices or weapons that could give them an unfair advantage. And the other things, actually, that's it for this lesson. I'll try to do this every week. I make these lessons every week, so I might as well just take this time to share it with a possible audience who could also enjoy this. And if you're interested in studying with me, I have a couple availabilities slots on Saturday, but not on Sunday. Sunday's full, and that's when I'm recording this, and that's why sometimes I don't do it, because by the end of the day, I'm like, I'm tired. But like I said, I'm never going to use this again. I create new lessons every week. It's partly for my students, it's partly for me, it's partly to keep up to date and reiterate some of these words. You will notice a lot of these vocabulary words are the same words that I've used in the past: vibrant, immortal, all of these terms, and many more to come. So thank you. I'll see you next time, and that's perfect timing, right about 30 minutes. Bye-bye.